For many, many months, an investigation into several different possible locations for a brand new Rappahannock River crossing and Parkway west of Interstate 95 has been underway. The results of the study were presented this past November. As part of the study, after examining the information gathered, an effort was made to determine which of the 5 potential options were preferable. A survey was made available to the general public, where individuals could review the information provided and express their preferred choice by ranking the options in order of their favorites. An examination of the ranked voting survey results are still ongoing to determine the amount of public support that might exist for these 5 options. Delving into the materials provided to the general public, here is a more detailed examination to utilize in assisting to determine preferences. This examination attempts to formulate a preference on which option would most effectively assist in moving more vehicles in a shorter amount of time, which option limits negative impact on the known environment, and which option creates opportunities for the general public. The months-long study modeled which option would be utilized the most, examining the travel demand during the PM peak hours between 3 and 6 o'clock. 3 of the 5 options, B, 1, B2, and C, utilize the existing infrastructure of Celebrate Virginia Parkway connecting to Route 17 at 5 or 6 access points along that roadway. Since options B1 and B2 use the same entrance and exit points crossing the river, the model showed 8,590 vehicles would use that option the most during this PM peak time period. That volume is over 1,500 more vehicles, or 18% more than option A. Both options C and option D also would be utilized less than option B1 or B2. As a part of the study, origin and destination modeling was also completed for that 2050 year. However, those travel times were not provided to the general public as info to assist in completing the survey. This modeling identified that all 5 of the options would reduce travel times when compared to a no-build scenario, with no bridge and parkway having been constructed. When comparing the reduction in travel time as a percentage of how much shorter the trips would be between these origins and destinations, it became evident that for these total 12 trips that were modeled, that using the 3 options that utilized Celebrate Virginia Parkway shortened the travel times the most. Trips using option B1, B2, or C shortened the trip times by 55% when compared to the no-build option. These 3 Celebrate Parkway options were about 17% faster than option A and about 25% faster than option D. When making a specific comparison for a trip from Del Webb's Riverside Lodge Community Center to the Mary Washington Hospital, if no new bridge and parkway existed, the modeled time was 30 minutes for that trip. If option A was utilized for that trip, it would be reduced to 17 minutes. Amazingly, if option B2 was used for that same trip from the Riverside Lodge to the hospital, the trip would only take 10 minutes or 40% quicker than if utilizing the option A route. Another factor to be considered that was modeled had to do with what is known as levels of service, or how shorter delays at intersections would be impacted by the 5 different options versus the no-build option. 25 different intersections in the region were modeled, and the average reduction in seconds ranged in reducing delays between 6.02 seconds to 7.76 seconds for the region. Some specific intersections improved greatly in reducing the amount of time a vehicle might sit at an intersection waiting to proceed after the traffic signal has changed, but in other instances, some waiting times became longer. As the bar chart identifies for the 5 different options, the average reduction in delay only differs by 1 3/4 seconds between the options when comparing the overall impact across the entire region. Essentially, overall, for the region, the total impact for all 5 options is almost identical. Certainly not noticeable experiences for drivers when comparing the options in total for the region. Another important factor deals with the environment, which surely will impact the region in a variety of ways by constructing a new parkway and bridge. The table provided in the study looked at 14 different categories and determined which impacts would be least or considered more favorable, shown in green. Which factor would have a moderate impact or be moderately favorable to the environment, as shown in yellow, and which factor would have the highest impact, as shown in orange, and thus be less favorable to the environment. The displayed bar chart identifies the number of more favorable, moderately favorable, and less favorable results for the 5 different options. Option A, with 5 favorable ratings, has 1 more favorable result than 2 of the other options. Option D has only 1 favorable result and 9 least favorable rankings. Options B1 and B2 have the most moderately favorable ratings. It is important to evaluate the full grouping of all 14 categories as a whole to accurately determine which of the options will have the most negative environmental impact and which options will have the least amount of negative impact. A scoring system that numerically grades the entirety of the 14 categories can be employed, with the most favorable rankings receiving a grade of A, the moderately favorable receiving a grade of B, and the less favorable rankings receiving a grade of C. In this manner, an average grade can then be calculated to determine which of the 5 options represents the most overall favorable impact. That most favorable option was B1, followed by a tie between options A and C, with option D receiving the lowest grade, representing the largest amount of negative impact on the environment. The option A bridge is unique when compared to the other potential bridges, in that its parkway currently runs adjacent to several streams in the region and ultimately crosses the river furthest east, in a location that barely fits in between the England Run stream on the north side of the river and very close to the Quarry Lake on the south side. None of the other options are remotely as close to streams and lakes as option A. Additionally, there are no environmental protections, such as conservation easements, protecting this potential river crossing. Further, as the Friends of the Rappahannock organization have offered a report card grading the local streams that empty into the river, the England Run stream is the only stream out of the 11 streams evaluated to receive only A and B grades. Environmentally, there are other considerations to mention. The lengths of new roadway to be constructed will certainly have an impact on the environment. Both option D and option A have substantial construction needs. In comparison, options B1 and B2 require less than 9/10 of a mile of new roadway construction. Additionally, the widening along Greenbank Road for option D, with over 1 mile in length, would impact an estimated 63 existing homes along that road. Consider also that the option A and D routes are in close proximity to long stretches of streams when compared to the other options. The proposed path for option A will also impact 13 existing commercial sites. And as stated before, option A does not have any existing environmental protections like the other 4 choices, yet is in a more environmentally sensitive location than those other options. Whichever option is chosen, the intention is for the proposed bridge and parkway to be available for shared use by bicyclists and pedestrians. Considering the location of the bridges, only option A, estimated to be the longest bridge, is within very close proximity to Interstate 95. The road noise generated by I-95 will impact the appeal to the general public to use the bridge, whereas the western options B1, B2, C, or D will not have that issue. Those 4 options will also have a clean, unobstructed view, east and west, of the river, while users of the option A bridge can only look to the west away from the I-95 bridge. In determining a preference for the bridge and parkway, an objective analysis of the information provided in the study, such as travel demand, travel times, intersection delays, environmental impact, and shared use opportunities, is a necessity, rather than holding on to a special interest. However, it is also important to think further, to consider that modifications could be made to the corridors utilized by these 5 various current options. If changes were to be made to these routes, could a more viable solution be arrived at? A solution that addresses the concerns that have been raised by the public. A solution that might provide a better answer to the transportation problems encountered within our rapidly growing region.